Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am absolutely delighted to be back in New Hampshire. It's not all that cold here, really. This is kind of nice. I was in Iowa yesterday. Now, that was cold. But I'll tell you, any place in this country is great because we live in a fabulous nation. And, you know, I've visited 58 countries, and some places are beautiful, but I'll tell you, there's no place like America. It is the most exceptional nation that the world has ever known. And, you know, I frankly get kind of tired of people who are always denigrating our country and, you know, talking about all the horrible things we've done and how we're responsible for so much evil in the world. If we were so bad, why would so many people be trying to get in here and not too many people trying to get out? You know, you have to really think about that. But it certainly has been a land of dreams, a place where people come from the world over to try to realize their dreams. And I had a dream of becoming a doctor. It was really the only thing that really grabbed my attention as a youngster. I loved anything that had to do with medicine. You know, Dr. Kildare, Dr. Casey, that kind of stuff, man. I even like going to the doctor's office, which is strange for a little kid. You know, I would gladly sacrifice a shot just so I could smell those alcohol swabs, you know. And if it was a really good day, the doctor would let you put the stethoscope on and listen to your heart. I mean, that was like the best thing of all. But, you know, it probably would seem like an unlikely scenario for me to realize that dream. Because, you know, my parents had gotten divorced when I was 8. And my mother only had a third grade education. So, you know, it was tough times economically. Very, very difficult. And, you know, my mother worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time trying to make ends meet. People were always saying, well, you've got 2 boys. You can be on aid to dependent children. You don't have to work. But she didn't like the idea of being dependent on other people. She was a fiercely independent individual. She just didn't like the idea of being a victim. And as bad as her life was, she never felt sorry for herself. And that was a good thing. Probably she never felt sorry for us either. So, you know, there was never any excuse that we could give her. We do enough. She would always say, do you have a brain? And if the answer to that was yes, then you could have thought we already knew it. It really doesn't matter what anybody else said. In retrospect, that is probably the best thing that she did for me and for my brother. To, you know, give us that sense of finding solutions and not leaning on excuses. It makes all the difference in the world. You know, interestingly, you know, my whole life has been about finding solutions since that time. And I find it rather fascinating that there are a lot of people in our country who seem to think that strength and success is about how loud you talk, how many decibels are behind it, how many gesticulations are associated with what you say, as opposed to what problems have you solved and what have you accomplished in life. And it really is a very false dichotomy. We look at the wrong things, and I believe that that's the reason that we're in the shape that we're in right now. We need to be looking at success. And, you know, as difficult as my life was, you know, I don't like to talk about it very often because I'm not a braggadocious person, but the fact of the matter is, I was appointed chief of pediatric neurosurgery at age 33. Most people haven't even finished their neurosurgery residency by that time at Johns Hopkins. Pediatric neurosurgery was not on the map at Hopkins. I built it. By 2008, U.S. News and World Report ranked it #1 in the nation. You can't do that without having some toughness. And recognize that the highest honor that a university gives is an honorary doctorate degree. I have 67 of them. Now, I got to tell you, they don't seek out weak people to give those to. They look for people who can be real examples for the student. On the occasion of its 200th anniversary, the Library of Congress chose 89 living legends. I was one of them. They didn't go around looking for weak people. I have the Presidential Medal of Freedom, highest civilian honor given in the United States. And CNN and Time magazine chose me as one of 20 foremost scientists and physicians. That was before they knew I was a conservative. So, and I could go on and on talking. The point being that I think it's time for us to start looking at what is a person able to accomplish, because we have some major issues that need to be accomplished, and they will not be accomplished by just talking about them. And it's not necessarily that you do them all by yourself. You know, many of these surgical procedures that I'm known for, first of all, met with a lot of controversy because they were out of the box, way beyond the edge, and, you know, I had a lot of controversy about them. But you steadily work on them, and you work with other people. You know, some of the cases like conjoined twins, where we had to use hypothermic arrest, cool the body temperature until the heart stops, pump all the blood out, operate on the vessels, reconstruct them, pump the blood back in, warm it up, and start the heart back up. Well, you know, I'm not a cardiothoracic surgeon, so I had to find really good people who knew how to do that kind of stuff. And lots of other things. You work together. And that's what has to be done now in our country. You know, I served on the board of Kellogg for 18 years, Costco for 16 years, got a chance to work with a lot of CEOs. And let me tell you something about a good CEO. They don't know everything, but they know how to pick people. That's why they have a vice president of HR and of finance and of mergers and acquisition and of all the other things. And you sit down with these people and you craft the plan and how to execute the plan. And it really is rather silly for anybody to think that anybody's an expert in everything. But it's wisdom and knowing how to use the information. You know, George Washington only had 4 cabinet members, but they consulted on virtually everything, and they were very, very successful in the things that they did. And some of those things were very, very difficult. And right now, we have some massively difficult things to do, which will require not only intellect and wisdom, but also courage. Because we've reached a stage where everybody wants to be popular and always put your finger up in the air and say the right thing. But that's not getting us to where we need to be. And if we continue down that road, I'm afraid of what will happen. It's particularly important, I think, for conservatives to put their thinking caps on right now. Because, you know, we've been manipulated. I personally think by the liberals, they've been successful in manipulating us and making us think that you better agree with that person 100% on everything, or you are compromising your principles. You would better just stay home and don't do anything. That's what they want you to think. And unfortunately, they've been successful in getting a lot of people to think that. The fact of the matter is, if you don't vote, you are voting. But you're voting for the wrong people. And if we vote for the wrong people this time, and we get another progressive in there, and they get 2 or 3 Supreme Court picks, America as we know it is gone. We will not get it back. You know? Well, you know, at any rate, you know, as a youngster, I was not a very good student. And that's putting it mildly. I mean, my nickname was Dummy. That's what everybody called me. And I didn't like it very much, but that's just the way it was. And I did admire the smart kids, though. I was always saying, how do they know so much? They're in the same grade as I am. But they always seem to know the answers to everything. But the kind of student that I was is sort of like some of the students that I encounter today. More alarmingly, like some of the adults that I encounter today who don't know anything. Have you noticed that there are a lot of people who don't know anything? I mean, they may know a little bit about, you know, a football game and about the latest movie or something like that, but in terms of important things, have you ever watched that, like Jesse Waters' World? Oh, it is just unbelievable, the depth of ignorance. I don't even know how those people can live. They're so stupid. But unfortunately, they're out there, and it's a problem. And, you know, our founders, and particularly Franklin and Jefferson, talked about the importance of having an informed and educated populace. They said, our freedom and our system is based upon a well-informed and educated populace. If they ever become anything other than that, the nature of the country will change. Why? Because people would be easily manipulated. And all it would take was dishonest, slick politicians and complicit media. And off you go in a completely different direction. Case in point, how many times have you heard recently how wonderful the economy is? And, you know, unemployment is down to 5%, which is the definition of full employment, by the way. Everything is just rosy and wonderful because of the great policies of this administration. Now, if you're not well informed, you buy that hook, line, and sinker, and you say, see, I told you it was a great administration and they were doing great things. On the other hand, if you're informed, then you know that the real number is the labor force participation rate, the number of people eligible to work who are actually working. And that number is at a 38-year low right now. Very, very sluggish. And then, you know, when you're talking about the sluggishness of the economy, you know, we have an $18.5 to $19 trillion national debt. Now, what is the effect of that? You know, you hear people talking about the new norm. You know, we're not growing very fast. We have, and just get used to it, they say. Why should we get used to it? From 1850 until 2000, our economy grew at a rate approximately twice what it has grown from 2001 until the present. Now, another interesting statistic. The debt to GDP ratio in 2001 was 57%. Today, 103%. Our national debt is greater than our GDP. You have to go all the way back to World War II to find that kind of situation. And we're making it even worse. I mean, look at this omnibus bill that was passed by a Republican House. And what's in it? Climate change, resettling of refugees in this country, Obamacare, Planned Parenthood, sanctuary cities. Are you kidding me? And with a Republican-controlled Congress, it is absurd. And you say, why are they betraying us? Why is this happening? I've been studying the situation, and what I've discovered, we've sent a lot of people over the last few election cycles, and you would think that things would be different. They would stop the agenda of this president, and they haven't. Because when they get there, they barely have time to sit in their office before there are people in there saying, look, you need to get this plum position, and it'll give you a lot more influence and a lot more power. But in order to get that, you have to go along with the program. You have to play the game. And, they're thinking, well, that makes sense, actually. Because if I can get more power, I can do more for my constituents, and I can be more effective. So they fall for the ruse. And then they get the position. And they're ready to do good things for you, except that there's somebody else in their office. You can get an even better position than this. You have to go along with the game. And on it goes. And that's why people that we send, and we think they're good people, we think they're just like us, but nothing gets done. Now, is there a solution to that? Very, very strong leadership would be a solution, but we don't have that, unfortunately. Not in the House and in the Senate right now. Doesn't mean that we can't get it. And it's something that we need to be pushing for. But what we can get in 2016 is a very strong president who knows how to solve problems, who has a backbone and is not afraid. That's what we need. Okay. And if we get that, then I believe that those individuals will stand up behind them. They won't stand up in front, but they will stand behind. And I think that that is the hope. Because what needs to be done are big things, bold, audacious things. We can't just be tinkering around the edge with what's going on. Let's get back to this national debt, just as an example. Now, what is the effect on the middle class and poor people of that kind of debt? Well, not only that, but the Fed, the central bank, its policies are severely affected by that level of debt. They've been wanting to raise the interest rates for quite some time. But it's very difficult when you have that level of debt because the debt service, the interest on it is so high. Right now, with near zero rates, we're paying $250 billion a year. That's going to go up around $300 billion now that we just raised it 0.25%. But if we had normal interest rates, we'd be talking $1 trillion. We can't afford that. So how does that affect Joe the butcher, who used to go every Friday to the bank and put 5% of his check in a savings account and watch it grow over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, retire and have a very nice nest egg with or without Social Security? He doesn't do that anymore. He's not incentivized to do that because he's not making any money in that savings account. No money in the bond market. The only people who can make money are people who have risk tolerance and can put money in the stock market. Well, who are those? More well-to-do people. So what happens as a result? The income gap spreads. Now, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton will tell you the income gap is spreading because of those evil rich people. And if we just take their money and redistribute it, everything will be just fine. Of course, it doesn't work that way. We all know that. And honestly, they know it too. But they figure there's more poor people than there are rich people. And it's just a ploy, a tactic. Same thing that Obama would do. And yet, under his watch, the rich have gotten richer and the poor have gotten poorer. And we got to get people to open their eyes and actually see what's going on. The other thing that severely affects the middle class and the poor people in terms of their sense of well-being, regulations. We now have a flood of regulations insinuating themselves into every aspect of our lives. Every single regulation costs us money. It's a tax. And it's a very regressive tax because it hits the poor and the middle class much harder than it does the rich, because they all have to pay the same thing. You know, sat around the corporate board table many an afternoon at Costco and Kellogg talking about new regulations, not just Dodd-Frank, but everything that came along. How many lawyers are we going to have to hire? How many new departments do we have to establish? All of which costs a lot of money. Guess who gets to pay for it? You do. When you go into the store and that box of laundry detergent has gone up 5 or 10 cents, it doesn't hurt rich people. They don't even notice it. Poor people notice it right away. Middle class may not notice it right away, but they will notice it by the time they get to the cash register and everything, and their cart has gone up 5 or 10 cents. And that's why the sense of well-being is not what it used to be. What I would suggest when you look at all these regulations is that we evaluate every single one of them in terms of its cost to benefit ratio. Every single one. If the benefits do not justify the cost, out it goes. I mean, you look at the president's Clean Power Plan. The EPA, which is not notoriously objective, has evaluated the plan. And they said, if we implement every aspect of it, the temperature, the global temperature will go down 0.05 degrees Fahrenheit in 85 years. So you can see the benefit there is not substantial. It's not even clear that there's a correlation there, to be honest with you. But what will it cost? It will cost billions upon billions of dollars and millions of jobs. And see, that's the kind of thing that's not being evaluated now. You know, one of the things that I would be very anxious to do is change the mission of things like the Environmental Protection Agency. Right now, it's a bully agency that goes around, puts his foot on everybody's throat and threatens them. You know, a couple of weeks ago I was out in Nevada, and some of the miners, I was talking to some of the miners who were being harassed by the Bureau of Land Management and the EPA. So you can't mine here, even though the mining was done in a way that was very respectful of the environment, because there are sage grouse in the area. Sage grouse. Are you kidding me? And I said, and I talked to the BLM too. And I said, these sage grouse, are they anywhere else? Oh, yeah, they're all over. And I said, are they mobile? Yeah, they're mobile. And I said, are they on the endangered species list? Well, no, they're not. But that's only because we're so great, and you know we take care of everything. That's why they're not. Give me a break. I mean, this is typical bureaucratic crap, and that's why I would give the EPA a new mission of working with business, industry, academia to find the cleanest, most environmentally friendly ways to take advantage of our enormous resources in this country, rather than to stifle the development of things. And, you know, we have the most powerful and dynamic economic engine that the world has ever known in this country. It's just that it's not able to work because of all these regulations and because of a tax code that is ridiculous. You look at our corporate tax rate. It is the highest in the developed world. Even in the undeveloped world, only the UAE and Chad have higher taxes than we do. It is absurd. And again, I can remember many afternoons sitting around the corporate board tables talking about the billions of dollars overseas. What are we going to do with them? We would love them, bring them back to the United States. Maybe start a new plant or something. But no, that would be irresponsible because of those high corporate tax rates. What I would suggest we do is a 6-month tax-free hiatus, allowing the more than $2.1 trillion of American money to be brought back to this country. And I would only stipulate that 10% of it had to be used in enterprise zones and to create jobs for people who are unemployed and on welfare. You want to talk about a stimulus. That would be the biggest stimulus since FDR's New Deal, and it wouldn't cost the taxpayers one penny. You know, that's low-hanging fruit. That's the kind of thing that we need to be taking advantage of. And the good thing about that is that it now gets our companies thinking about investing in people. Because I personally believe that it is our duty, the private sector, to take care of the social problems that exist among us. It is not the government's job. And somehow, when the government does it, all they do is create bureaucracies and screw things up. You know, you think about, it really kind of started in earnest in the 20s, with the Wilson administration, and it just kept growing. By the time we got to the 60s with LBJ, he's talking about, we're going to eliminate poverty, the war on poverty, the Great Society. How did that work? How did that turn out? $19 trillion later, we have 10 times more people on food stamps, more welfare, more poverty, broken homes, out of wedlock births, crime, incarceration. Everything that was supposed to be better is not only worse, it's much worse. And that's what happens when the government tries to do what it's not supposed to do. They need to read the Constitution and find out what their real duty is. Now, maybe they did read it. Maybe they read the preamble, and maybe they were confused because the preamble says to promote the general welfare. But that doesn't mean put everybody on welfare. See, they don't understand that. Okay. And, I would like to facilitate private sector getting things done. And the program that I just outlined with the taxes from overseas would be one way to get that jump started and get private industry, business industry, academia, Wall Street, churches, community groups involved in taking care of people. Because, before I started, on this political trail, I was doing a lot of public speaking, and particularly at nonprofits around the country, and looking at some of the programs that the private sector was doing. It was fabulous. I mean, there was one program where they would go out, this was a church-related group, they would go out in the community and they would find people who were down and out on the streets, homeless people, and they would bring them into their program, a 19-week program, free of charge, clean them up, give them new clothes, feed them, everything, teach them the basic fundamental responsibilities necessary to hold a job. Help them get a job. Talk to their employers. After a year, about 70% of those people are off the public dole. One young lady that I talked to who was in the program, she was homeless and a drug addict when they found her. When I spoke to her, she was 3 months away from getting her PhD. You think about this. You think about all the talent that exists out there. And we need to develop all of our talent. Remember, we only have 330 million people. We have to compete against China. They have 1.4 billion people. India has over 1 billion people. We have 330 million. We got to develop them all. We got to remember, for every one of those young people that we keep from going on that path of self-destruction, it's one less person we have to be afraid of, or protect our family from, or pay for in the penal system or the welfare system. One more tax-paying, productive member of society who may discover a new energy source or the cure for cancer. We cannot afford to throw any of our people away. They're all very valuable to us. Definitely. Now, the other thing that is extremely worrisome to me with regard to our future, because, getting taxes straightened out, getting regulations straightened out, I think will have an incredible effect on our economy. I think you will see it just burst through the ceiling once people feel that the government has some integrity and is not trying to rob them and treat people in a different way, and we have a flat tax that treats everybody fairly with no deductions and no loopholes. That's the kind of thing that I think makes sense. And the reason I think that makes sense is because it made sense for God. He said, I want a tithe. And he didn't say, if you have a bumper crop, give me triple tithe. He didn't say, if your crops fail, you don't owe me anything. Very proportional. You make $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. You make $10, you pay $1. You get the same rights and privileges. No deductions, no loopholes. Now, some people say, well, that's not fair, because the guy who put in $1 billion, he's still got $9 billion left. We need to take more of his money. Well, that's called socialism. Now, some people like it. I don't. That's not a system that we have. Not the system we have. And that wasn't the system that allowed this country to rise from nowhere to the pinnacle of the world in record time. It was creating an atmosphere that encouraged entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. Those are the fuels of that economic engine. And I believe we can get that back pretty quickly. But what I'm more afraid of in terms of our future is our failure to lead in the world. This is a very dangerous world. And I have to tell you, we are responsible to a degree for some of the danger because we don't understand completely what's going on in the world. You look over in the Middle East and you look at the whole Islamic culture. Before you go meddling in it, you need to understand it. You need to understand who Muhammad was and what his life was in Mecca, and how the people there didn't like him very much. And his uncle, who was very influential, kind of kept them off his back. And then his uncle died, and he had to basically hightail out of there, went up north to Medina, where he put together, a military force, which was highly intolerant of anybody who didn't believe the way that they did. And, particularly Jews and Christians. And they just massacred people, enslaved people, dominated people, lied to people, did anything that they wanted. And they had an eventual goal of world domination. Now, a lot of things happened in the interim, but in order for them to continue their quest of global jihad, they must have a caliph, a supreme leader, and the caliph must have a caliphate, which is an Islamic state. The last time they had that was 1924, Ataturk, Turkey. They haven't had it for a long time until recently. And recently they've been able to acquire land, half of Iraq, a third of Syria. They have footholds in Egypt. One of the things that is very concerning is they now have land in Libya. And why is that so concerning? Just go north across the water and you're into southern Europe, not very far distant. You go south, you're into Chad, Niger, Sudan. You've got a perfect location to spread, that ideology. Now, if you're going to defeat them, you can spend all your time thinking about what can we do over here to protect our communities. I think I have a better plan. You have to defeat them over there so that they don't get a chance to spend their time thinking about what to do here. And in order to delegitimize them, because they are able to recruit all over the world, they particularly go to disaffected people because now they have their caliphate. You take the caliphate from them. We have to utilize our expertise to absolutely destroy the basis of their legitimacy. And, right now what they do is they hide among the populace because they figured that we won't do anything because, we are very politically correct, so we won't go after them there. And, we even do things like the rules of engagement from the Obama administration. When oil tanker trucks are coming out of refineries, don't bomb them because there are people in them. Are you kidding me? That is ridiculous. And I'm a very humanitarian person, believe me. I don't want to just bomb people, but there are better ways to do it. I would just say, hey guys, any truck coming out of there is getting bombed, so if you don't want your people to die, don't put them in the truck. That makes a lot more sense to me. But as we take their land, they have to either come out and expose themselves, in which time we wipe them out. We got our Apache helicopters and our special ops and stuff, and we wipe them out. And then, or they have to capitulate and let us take it. Either way, we're good. ISIS is the wealthiest terror organization on earth. Why? Because of their oil revenues. We take that from them. I've been saying that for well over a year. But all the people who think I don't know anything about foreign policy, they never mention all the things that I've been talking about. It's okay. But in addition to depriving them of their oil revenues, you have to shut down all of the mechanisms whereby they can transfer money. Because, they get the disaffected people by being able to pay them. If they can't pay them, they got a real problem on their hands. We need to shut that down. And then they sit up in their command and control centers and organize all this stuff like on a big chessboard. Their main control center is in Raqqa, with lesser degree in Mosul. We need to root them out of there. Don't let them sit there in comfort. There's only 4 ways in and out of Raqqa. You can shut those off, just like we did with Sinjar a month ago. ISIS had taken Sinjar. Our special ops people, with the Kurds, shut off all of their supply routes, softened the city. Then they were able to go in, backed up by air support, and take it. It's a very good model. Just typical military strategy. Works extremely well. And we need to chase them out of Raqqa, chase them out of Mosul, chase them out of every place that they go. Have them constantly on the run while you eliminate them. We're not talking about containing them. We're talking about eliminating them, because that is their goal, is to eliminate us. And unless we understand them and we understand where they derive their power and what their goals are, we will not be successful. And we have to be serious about it. And I think that's the reason that the American people are kind of uptight right now, Because I think most of us know that this is a problem, but we have an administration that doesn't seem to know it. And that creates a lot of anxiety because we don't know what's going to happen over this next 12 to 13 months before we have an opportunity to have somebody who actually knows what's going on and how to solve problems. And things are going to be a lot worse by that time. And we all have to just hope and pray, be vigilant, encourage our representatives to have a little bit of backbone and a little bit of a spine and be able to stand up to what's going on, because they are our defense. They are the people who represent us. But if they're going to just capitulate and do what they're supposed to do according to the administration, I'm not sure that that's going to work out in our behalf. Then I'm going to open up for questions momentarily. But the other thing that I think is so important is that we have to have a proactive government and not a reactive government. So when you're looking at somebody like Vladimir Putin, you know, I got to tell you, he is not a good guy. You know, he's going to sit there and try to act like, I'm a great guy. I'm really just out to help everybody and to be a wonderful individual. That's not what he is. All you have to do is look back at his history. I mean, this guy was a big wig in the KGB and has a record of brutality that is very significant. But he looks for weakness. Anywhere he finds weakness, he will exploit weakness. However, recognize that he is a one-horse show. His power base is oil. He doesn't have anything else. And we are very fortunate right now that the price of oil is relatively low. That's what's keeping him a little bit under control. We need to understand that because we need to make sure that it stays low. We need to be encouraging our people to develop better techniques of fracking that cost less money so that they can still make very good profits, but still keep that price low. We need to become oil independent. We need to get the Keystone Pipeline going. We need to utilize, you know, look at how much natural gas we have. I mean, we have hundreds of years worth of natural gas. If we just waste it, we can extract it for $2 to $3 per cubic liter. Very, very cheap to use around here. More importantly, we can now liquefy it, $2 to $3 per cubic liter. We can ship it overseas at $2 or $3 per cubic liter, so that by the time you get it over there, you know, instead of $2 or $3, it's maybe $8 to $10. But what is the price the Europeans are paying for it now? About $16. So you can undercut them, you can undercut Putin, you can make Europe dependent on us, and put him back in his little box where he belongs. You know, that's the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about proactively. And then let's not let him intimidate our friends. You know, you look at Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they are shaking in their shoes right now because they've seen what's happened. You know, Georgia, Crimea, and Ukraine, who gave up their nuclear weapons. There was a gentleman's agreement that if, you know, they were invaded or something happened, that we would help. Did we help? No. We won't even give them weapons to fight. And I think the rest of the world notices that. It doesn't go unnoticed at all. They also notice that we've turned our backs on Israel. If we turn our backs on our best friends, why would anybody trust us? And so, you know, like down in the Middle East, where we're trying to call for this coalition, and we say we need their boots on the ground, and then we'll be the special ops, and then we'll use our Air Force, and everything will be fine. Why are we not being successful in that endeavor? Because nobody's enthusiastically getting behind us. Why would they? They're sitting on the fence, even though it is in their interest to join us, because they don't know when we're going to turn our backs on them. And then all of a sudden they're faced with the full wrath of ISIS. You know, they're not totally stupid about this. If we were more dependable, believe me, we would have a lot more support. If our friends knew they were our friends and our enemies knew they were our enemies, it would make all the difference in the world. But, you know, getting back to Putin, that part of the world, I would put some more armored brigades. We only have 1 or 2 armored brigades in that whole Baltic Rim. Put some armored brigades in there, do some NATO exercises in his face, reestablish the missile defense system, give Ukraine offensive weapons, get in his face at every opportunity. You know, we also need to modernize. We need to modernize our nuclear capabilities. I mean, our stuff is like decades old. I don't even know if the doors will open on those missile silos if you push the button, you know? I mean, it is really a serious situation. And then look at our electric grid. Very, very vulnerable. We need immediate action to harden it. We need public-private partnerships. You know, take advantage of the tremendous knowledge and ability in our private sector working along with our government. This is something that is urgent. And we need to get back into the space program. Not so much because I want men walking on Mars, but remember, a lot of technology that is used every day came out of the space program. You know, that's one of the reasons we were able to stay so far ahead of everybody with our military, because we had all of those innovations coming out of our space program. They've all caught up with us now. We have to pay $77 million every time we want to send an astronaut up to the space station. That's the fare the Russians charge us. And we need to understand that in the future, he who controls space will control the Earth. We are in very vulnerable shape right now. And I got to tell you, as I think about all this stuff, if I were in charge of this nation and I was trying to destroy it from inside, let me tell you what I would do. I would try to drive wedges between all the people. I would have them fighting each other, particularly when we have others from the outside trying to destroy us. It would be so much easier if I can have all the American people fighting each other. A war on women, race wars, income wars, religious wars, age wars, every kind of war imaginable. You just hate anybody who disagrees with you. And then I would drive the national debt to unsustainable limits, completely destabilize the financial foundation of the country. I would invite people in here from other countries, give them all kinds of benefits, try to get all of our people on all kinds of benefits, food stamps and SSI and everything imaginable. I would be giving people free telephones. I would be telling people you can get free college tuition. I would just have people eating out of my hand and expecting all of this stuff. And then I would destroy the military. I would have the smallest Navy since 1917, the smallest Air Force since 1940. I would be telling the veterans that they are the most wonderful people, but I would do nothing to fix the situation for them, so that there were 22 of them committing suicide every day, and that the morale was low, and that we have a 14% decrease in people applying for the voluntary military, and our generals retiring early because they're so frustrated. And I wouldn't do anything to fix the infrastructure and nothing to prepare the people. Now, that's what I would do if I was trying to destroy the nation. Any resemblance to what's going on, I'm sure it's coincidental. Okay, but does that not give you some idea of what is going on in our nation and why it is so serious and why each one of us must get involved? And we must talk to those people in our sphere of influence, just like they did in the pre-revolutionary days. They had town meetings. They got together. They talked about what kind of nation do you want to pass on to your children or your grandchildren? What are you willing to fight for? What are you willing to die for? This is how serious this is. This is just as serious as that was. And it's going to require each one of us to get involved and to vote and to get everybody that you know who hasn't been voting to vote. Get your Uncle Joe, who's the alcoholic, who does nothing but sit around and drink beer all day. You tell him that if he doesn't get involved, there won't be any beer. And, go and talk to your aunt who's an invalid in the nursing home. And make sure you get an absentee ballot for her. And if she needs help filling it out, you help her fill it out. If we all do things like that, believe me, we the people will once again be able to take control. And it was Thomas Jefferson who put it best. He said we would reach this point in this nation